Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Talking Geeky with me. And with the beginning intro, you saw an awesome stunt by the legendary Jackie Chan. So this video is about him, the man, the legend, Jackie Chan himself. So I think Jackie Chan is probably one of the most well-known people alive today. I mean, everybody knows him, right? There's people out there who've not really, probably not even seen one of his films, but know who he is. You know, of course, he's always going to be connected with his martial arts and stunts and so on. But he's one of those guys that, very likable. Yeah, he's one of those people that everybody recognizes. Probably at the moment, probably the most recognizable Asian person in the world, and yeah, probably one of the most recognizable celebrities in general as well. Anyway, enough of that. So Jackie Chan, big fan of his, of course. So let's go back in time to, in my opinion, is Jackie Chan's best days. I would say probably the late 70s to maybe the early 90s were probably his best time. Not to say that some of the newer stuff is bad, but it comes with the territory, right? When you get to a certain age, if anybody knows Jackie Chan and seen some of the movies that he's shown here, would know that you can't maintain that. It's just a way of life. Your body just can't keep up. You're never going to be 20 and do all these amazing stuff. So, if anybody knows some history about Jackie Chan, right? I mean, he kind of started in the mid 70s, maybe even early 70s when Bruce Lee died. So when Bruce Lee died, the cinema industry in Hong Kong was kind of like a mess. They had a void to fill. Bruce Lee himself was, legendary, another character, right? So there was every producer, movie studio was looking for a new Bruce Lee. So you had all of these Bruces, Bruce Lee, Bruce this, Bruce that, and so on. I'm gonna link an interview with Jackie Chan where he talks about it. It's about over an hour long, and definitely check that out. It's actually a really funny watch, so definitely check it out. And so they, found Jackie Chan. He did like a new Fist of Fury, directed by the same guy who did Fist of Fury. And it flopped. I mean, Jackie Chan was that period. I was like, say, early to the late 70s. He was kind of churning out film after film that flopped. It bombed in the cinema. That's it. The director's name is Law Wei. He did the original Fist of Fury. And he kind of, in one interview where Jackie Chan said that he tried to escape Law Wei and avoid him, didn't want to do any more films. And it was Law Wei's wife that got in touch with Jackie Chan and asked to meet up with him and say, what's happening, So Jackie Chan told Law Wei's wife he just wanted to kind of get involved with his own films, like do his own action choreography, maybe even produce his own films and so on. And of course, he all worked out, and Law Wei gave him that opportunity. Anyway, cut the long story short, he started like producing and do his own action choreography with films like The Drunken Master, the first Drunken Master, even Snake and the Eagle Shadow. Is it Snake and the Eagle Shadow? Oh, so Drunken Master. And of course, that would become a big hit. And then that kind of like a snowball effect. So in the early 70s, he had like Young Master, which was another great one. Dragon Lord, which I really liked. He's a funny comedy. It's very kind of different from other Jackie Chan films because in Dragon Lord, he's not a fighter, but definitely check those out. And he did a string of those kind of late 70s martial art films. And then, to me, in a way, that was a good start. That's when I really noticed him because I watched those films in the 80s. And then Chris Golden Harvest kind of came in, formed, with Jackie Chan, Yuen Biao, and Sam Hung, the three brothers. And they started doing films like the Project A, Part 1, Part 2, Police Stories, Heart of the Dragon, loads of films like that, where they started in a way they kind of created their own style of action. Oh, sorry, I got a bit of something in my throat there. Yeah, so they started this new kind of action. The martial art become more fast-paced, more energetic. In some sense, a bit more realistic. Um, you feel the punches, and I think they kind of started that where they actually genuinely, you can see in some of the slow motion, they actually genuinely get punched and hurt. I mean, you ask some of the actors, they do genuinely get punched. Where you look at, say, his early stuff like the Drunken Master, Young Master, where you see the actions was way more kind of the old school Shaw Brothers, But when they transition into like the early 80s, Golden Harvest Studios, they actually become a little bit more modern, more stylized. But I still think that, anyway, I get to that point in a second, what I was thinking of. But when you look at, say, and also he's always a great friend with Sammo Hung BRSY. He did loads of other films where he kind of did little cameos and so on, which I talk about that later on. So when you watch films like Project A Part 2, Police Story, the trilogy, and so on, he had a string of big hits, early 80s, all the way ending to the 90s. I mean, to the late 80s to the early 90s. He became the biggest box office draw in the whole of Asia. I mean, he transcended to like Korea, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and then of course he got the eyes of the Western audience, which I go into a bit more detail about his Hollywood films. But these are the films here that I recommend everyone check out to really understand the brilliance of Jackie Chan as a art director. He did a lot of art directing, action director, as a director himself, producer, even as an actor. Jackie Chan doesn't get much credit as an actor. So that's why I definitely recommend, which I'll go into more detail, where he may not be the best actor, but some of his roles, like for example, you take the Police Story, he's got comedy, typical Jackie Chan, right? They've got loads of comedy, but there's some serious beats to it. There's a lot of serious tone to that as well. And when you watch like the Police Story, you can see that action moved on a little bit more, become a little bit more street based. I loved it. It really got to me, and in a way that it inspired me to do my own martial arts. Now, of course, training in all kinds of martial arts in my own personal life. Definitely check these movies out. And funny story about Project A2, just remembered, is I think the Emperor of Japan loved the first one so much, he actually requested Jackie Chan to make the sequel. So he did. And then if you took a look at Wheels and Mules, where they starred all three technically from the same master, so they call themselves brothers. You have Sammo Hung, Yambio, Jackie Chan, and Wheels and Mules. That was actually directed by Sammo Hung, and Sammo Hung did the action director as well. And when you watch the difference between Jackie Chan's action and Sammo Hung's action, I will compare it like this. Jackie Chan is probably the best at using his environment, the environment around him, to the best use. But when you look at Sammo Hung here, he is, to me, to this day, the master of one-to-one combat. I mean, the ending fighting in Wheels and Mules with Jackie Chan and Benny Akides still ranks as one of the best fight scenes of all time. And that's been like 30 plus years now. And of course, they did a part 2, sort of like a rematch in Dragons Forever, which wasn't as good as the one in Wheels and Mules, but it was still amazing. Anyway, check those out. These are, to me, are like the grade A of Jackie Chan action, comedy, story. You don't really watch Jackie Chan for story films, right? Or dramatic scenes. You just watch them for fun, action, fast pace. And these films here to me are the top tier. Whoops, what is this? Stunt break. Okay then, let's go to a stunt break. Welcome back to part 2 of Jackie Chan movies. And on these movies here are, to me, are probably the second tier, which is good, not amazing. They're still definitely worth watching. Like, for example, Armor God 2, great, not as good as the first one. Miracles, kind of like in Cantonese it's called the Canton Father, which is kind of the Godfather, has a similar tone to the Project A, set in the same timeline. I was mentioned earlier when I talked about if you want to see Jackie Chan's more dramatic acting, I would definitely suggest watching Crime Story. He actually won a best actor in Hong Kong for that. It's violent. Definitely check it out. I think it was set in Taiwan, the second half of the movie. And you look at the martial arts there, it's not his traditional fancy, is much more realistic, but his acting is very dramatic now, so definitely check that out. I also mentioned earlier on in the last part was how he does a lot of cameos. So look at the three films on your right hand side, Winners and Sinners, My Lucky Stars, and Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars. They were all directed by Sammo Hung, and of course Sammo Hung is Jackie Chan's big brother from the same martial arts school. So of course Jackie Chan did him a favor and kind of co-star at the beginning and near the end. You should definitely watch those because he has that kind of comedy that was big in Hong Kong that time, where they get a group of kind of like celebrities, comedy actors together, and they'll have these zany kind of ventures and so on. And and the fight scenes are great because it was action is done by Sammo Hung, and definitely check those films out. You can see the difference between a Sammo Hung style action and the Jackie Chan style action. You're talking about another movie that won an award was the Drunken Master 2, Jackie Chan one, which had kind of no. It's not technically a sequel for the first Drunken Master, which is kind of does it has its own story to it. A lot of Hong Kong film does that, where they do a part 2 and they have the same name, but really got nothing to do with the first part. And you watch that, and the fight scene at the end is amazing. He fights. I can't remember his name. Is one of Jackie Chan's bodyguards. He uses the kicks. I think in that year, 1993, he won an award for best action, best martial art choreography. I think that was up against Jet Li's Fist of Fury or something like that. Can't remember. It's been a long time, but definitely check that out as well. And then looking at a bit more modern, like the New Police Story, which was okay. I mean, it's definitely the weaker one out of the four. It's a bit more modern. You get more the younger actors, which is something that Jackie Chan is really good at. He gives a lot of young actors, actresses chances to be in his films. Anyway, move on. Whoops. Another stunt break. Let's see what the stunt is. Hello everyone, hope everyone enjoyed that stunt break then. So back, Jackie Chan's movies, and this time we're heading towards Hollywood. And well, let's have a look at some of the films I put in. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, where Jackie Chan was amazing end of the 70s all the way to the early 90s, and then even to the mid 90s, slowly kind of did movies that was average, I would say, and nowhere near as good as his 80s stuff. It comes with his territory, right? And his action, his stunts, it starts to take a toll as you get older. And then, of course, he goes to America, Hollywood, did Rush Hour, which I thought was okay. It was a great start, comedy, paired with Chris Tucker. So it's a great start. I thought it was a great start. I didn't expect it, him to, or the movie to be amazing like that. And then Rush Hour 2, I felt that was a lot better. I thought it was funny. I think out of the three, it made the most money, and you can see that he and Chris Tucker become better friends. I mean, Jackie Chan would be the first one to tell everyone in the movies, in the interviews, that he didn't like Chris Tucker at first, and then slowly they got along, become best friends. The third Rush Hour, I just felt it was rushed. The script was terrible. I didn't know what he wanted to do. It wasn't funny. Action sequence wasn't that good either. I just didn't like it. Shanghai Nights and Shanghai Noon was okay, nothing special. And then from then on, just kind of, I don't know, Jackie Chan just fell off the grid. Didn't like any of his films, except for, to be honest, there's one film that is quite recent. I don't know about recent, about 5 years old now, 4 years old. It's The Foreigner. I thought that was a great film. I thought, Jackie Chan's acting was great. The Foreigner, originally based on the novel, and the original name was called The Chinaman. Of course, due to modern day reason, they changed it to The Foreigner, which I think was better. The title was better. I just think that as mentioned earlier, Jackie Chan is one of the most recognizable celebrities on the planet now. And I think that the way he is treated in the East compared to the West is night and day sometimes. You know, as I mentioned earlier, that Jackie Chan, yeah, he's known for his comedy, his action, not so much for his acting, but I mentioned you go and watch Crime Story and even the police stories. There's a lot of dramatic acting in that. And he won an acting award for Crime Story. But in the West, they only see him as the funny guy, you know, the martial art guy, does all these stunts and smiles a lot. And I feel like that he doesn't get respected in that way than he does in the West. I mean, he mentioned in an interview where he goes on set and, you know, he's so used to, in Asia, you know, he produces, he directs, he does the action, you know, all that kind of stuff, where he would tell in an interview where he goes, in America, they would take 3 days to do this, to do that, which is only for a 5-minute scene. And he would say that, you know, he could have done that in an hour, you know, because he had to bring in cranes and corner this off, special equipment, you know, so the filming style is different. I just feel like in the West, he does get treated differently. I don't know why, maybe it's just an Asian thing or whatever it is. But anyway, definitely check out the first batch of movies I showed. Late 70s to the late 80s, probably Jackie Chan's best time. And then even the second tier ones are still really good. To, you know, watch those ones to definitely understand what Jackie Chan is about. You know, not this Jackie Chan we know today that is portrayed in the Western movies. Okay, so yeah, definitely check out. And here's a quote from him. Yeah, I love it. The best fights are the ones we avoid. So remember, fighting is not a good thing, unless you have to defend yourself. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and please give this video a like. And let me know if you are a Jackie Chan fan. Do you prefer his 80s, 90s, 2000, or are you even a fan of his Hollywood movies? Well, anyway, thank you for watching, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And please stay safe. Goodbye.